Hey folks, Fernando doing our video for the More Survivalist, and this is going to be 5 goals for the survivalist that is on a very tight budget, but also applies for a survivalist that is just getting started, a newbie, maybe someone that has been in this for quite some time but needs to reevaluate his priorities. So these would be 5 goals, the ones that I believe you should be taking care of the most, pretty much in this order of importance. In the previous video we talked about the mental aspect of preparedness and why that is key, by far the most important thing. With the right mindset, with the right endurance and can-do attitude, you can pretty much overcome everything with enough creativity and imagination. Now, number 1 goal for me, besides that, which is a mental process, the number 1 goal for me would be get into physical shape. I'm not talking about being any elite athlete or cover magazine model. I'm just talking about being healthy, being in a reasonable weight, and having a certain kind of cardiovascular endurance and physical strength. These 2 things are the ones that I use the most, and this machine I use it pretty much every given day. I don't leave more than 1 day without using it, and if not, if I feel like I need to unwind a little bit, I'm gonna be giving it a 45 minutes or an hour and a half or something like that. Usually I'm watching something on one of the either my cell phone or something like that. So I'm watching something and working out a little bit. It is essential to stay in shape for a number of reasons, not just because of the possibility of having to run or do some physical labor so as to save yourself in a disaster, but also thinking of disasters or serious events not actually happening. This is about life. This is about your quality of life every given day. If you don't do this stuff, it's going to be suffering. You're not going to be in good shape. You're going to be suffering of poor health. This avoids a lot of headaches and improves your quality of life significantly. I mean, these machines, yeah, you can buy them new and they're going to be costing a little bit more. You can buy them used, which is usually quite more affordable. Sometimes you find these for almost nothing. This is an elliptical trainer. I like these because you're taking care of your knees, not impacting so much, but a treadmill or a stationary bicycle, either one of those, something that works on your cardio, that's the thing you're looking for here. So that would be one of the main things to look for. And also a couple of dumbbells. These you can get for very cheap, and you start adding weights little by little as you feel more comfortable with that, trying to keep a certain amount of mass, of muscular mass, as time goes by, and stay strong. There's a number of exercises, and YouTube is great for all that stuff. You can put or take away weight depending on what you're doing, what body part you're working on. That, your pull-ups, and little else. Really, you don't need a gym membership card. During my life, the moments that I've been the most fit, it's usually been because of my mental attitude towards it and working out at home. Just using the stuff, the basic stuff like this that I've had in different periods of time. But you don't have to spend a lot of money to stay in shape, and it is indeed, in my opinion, the number 1 priority for anyone that wants to be ready for survival and preparedness. So number 2 for me is procuring weapons for self-defense. Now, I understand that for some folks it may be kind of a debatable point of how important is it, and is it really number 2? For me it is. I mean, after the obvious one of being in proper physical shape so as to not drop dead because of this most common causes of premature death, there's really no substitute for this kind of stuff. There's no substitute when someone is kicking your door down at 2 a.m., when you're being attacked in a parking lot, when you are cornering in your house, in your bathroom, wishing not to be killed, your children raped and murdered and so on. You only will wish for one of these. That's the only thing that will be in your mind. It's not, I mean, things just that I've seen and a personal experience when living in Argentina, where violence is more of a common occurrence, but also listening to people that found themselves in that situation. I mean, talking with people that were telling me they were kicking the door down and I was screaming for them to leave, that I was calling the police, I was screaming that I had a gun when they didn't actually have one, but they were claiming to have one, screaming that. I don't think there's gonna be I mean, that's the kind of story I heard time and again. I don't remember ever hearing a story of someone screaming, "Hey, I have a Band-Aid," or "Hey, I have a bag of rice," or "Hey, I have," you know, those would not be the things people desperately shout at the top of their lungs. I have a gun, leave. Yes, that's one of the things that people do, scream, shout, desperately so. Much better if you actually have one and know how to use it. Now, this is, again, keeping in mind, trying to stay in a tight budget. If you have something like this, you're kind of in a nice setup, but you don't need to spend crazy amounts of money so as to be adequately armed. For me, the number one priority is having a handgun, and these days the obvious choice is a Glock pistol. Now, you can get a police trade-in Glock in 40 and then get yourself a 9mm barrel, or just stick to 40 just to have a gun that it's more than capable of being used for self-defense. That's perfectly fine. Or just buy a used Glock 9mm. If you are looking at a tight budget, Glock and 9mm would be the obvious choice. Now, the thing is, and I used to be more, you know, I want to say narrow-minded about it, or more you know, more strict in my line of thought, that for me there was just one right answer, which was getting a Glock, learning how to shoot it, and there was no excuse for doing anything else. These days I'm a little bit more flexible and understand that for some people, they want to be ready to defend themselves, but either they don't want or they cannot put the kind of training and hours and practice required so as to properly operate a semi-automatic pistol. It is not that it's any kind of difficulty to learn how to shoot a Glock. Any person can be taught to shoot a Glock in 15-20 minutes. The thing is being taught to a point, and practicing and training to a point where it will become instinctive for you to do so when under a terrible amount of stress. That is not something you're going to be learning in just a few minutes. That's something that's going to be taking classes and thousands of rounds of ammunition. So that's why I have, you know, a little wiggle room, and accept that if you're not going to be spending that kind of time and money so as to run a semi-automatic pistol properly, then get yourself a nice good revolver. One of a used Smith & Wesson, something that it's maybe going to be putting you back $200, $300. Stick to quality brands, Smith & Wesson, Ruger. Those are nice brands that are reliable and are unlikely to let you down. Some folks like Taurus. I've never had good luck with Taurus revolvers. I've had, I think, like 5, 6 of them, and all of them eventually ended up going to some other owner because they were just not something I was happy with. But my point is that with $200, $300, yes, on a tight budget, that's going to be some money, but you really do need to have something for self-defense. At least with a revolver, if you take a basic safety class, you're going to be learning the essential way in which you use the gun without hurting yourself. Then maybe combining it with a pump shotgun like the Mossbergs. The one on top there, was it $200? It's really not going to be costing you much more than that. They are quite affordable, and with a good revolver and a pump shotgun, you're kind of already well armed. If you want to push it a little bit further, being a little bit better armed, a 308, the Set-Me, I'm not sure what's the market right now in the United States, but a Set-Me is not all that expensive. Maybe, what is it, like $500? You know, maybe a little bit more. And these days, especially the AR-15, no, I'm not a huge fan of it by any means. I understand the gun and all, but it is acceptable, and you have some that are quite affordable. The price has dropped on these quite a lot. No, you don't need to buy a Colt and an aim point and spend that kind of money on it. With what is it, the Sport, the Smith & Wesson M&P Sport, it's a perfectly adequate gun, and as long as you do your part and take care of it, practice with it, it's gonna be more than okay. Number 3 is, without a doubt, cash. And yes, it is one of the most useful, most valuable tools a prepper, a survivalist could have. Money makes the world go around. Cash is king. Those are words to live by. I've seen it myself, and it's funny because you sometimes read or let's see in forums people saying, oh, cash is useless, it's just going to be paper and it has no value whatsoever when shit hits the fan. You know, their own personal little fantasies of how things end up being. That's pointless and useless. Look at real events, look at what really happens, and then you will see how cash is always useful. Look at disasters of different nature, even personal disasters, you know, serious problems at a personal level. You need to buy medicine, you need to see a doctor, you need to pay something that's essential for you. This is going to be getting you out of that spot. So yes, I don't underestimate at all how important cash is. And I've seen myself how this becomes almost useless overnight, you know. I've seen this lose its value almost 2/3 in just a few days, and even then cash was king, especially if you're looking at the right kind of cash. You know, the Argentine peso, it's not exactly a stable currency, which is what I saw pretty much melt in value right in front of my eyes. But if you're talking about US dollars, if you're talking about euros, this is not going to be disappearing overnight in terms of value. When things go wrong, when ATMs run out of money, when they're no longer accepting credit cards, this is indeed king. I mean, it's so many things that it comes in handy for, for anything that you end up needing because of whatever emergency you have, you're going to be able to buy it if you have enough of these. So yes, absolutely and without a doubt. At the same time, you see I have other things here. I have, of course, silver. For that specific worst case disaster where even this becomes just paper, which is a possibility. It is, after all, fiat currency. No value, no intrinsic value. It is effectively just paper, even though it's widely acceptable. Now, keep in mind, what I have here, this is 400 bucks. 40% of Americans don't have 400 bucks at their disposal. All right? 40% of Americans don't have this amount of money for emergencies, for any inconvenience, any serious problem, any car repair, any part that they need. They don't have this. Start working on this even if you're in a tight budget. Even if you're in a tight budget, if you put your mind to it, you should be able to put up 400, 500 bucks, 1,000 bucks. Even sell some of the crap you have lying around in your house. It's really not that complicated, and this, when you need it, it saves the day. It really does. Now, when that fails as well, here is where silver really shines. We're talking here about some of the worst case scenarios. We're talking here about ending up like Venezuela, right? Where one of these coins makes you practically, I'm not going to be saying rich, but this is more than what the average Venezuelan earns in a year. The average Venezuelan earns $1 or $2 a month. Right? You're going back to medieval times, but if you ever have to go back to medieval times for real, this is money. This is money for when shit really gets tough. And even better, start looking at adding a little by little, a few junk coins, junk silver in dimes and quarters, so as to have it broken down into smaller denominations for buying stuff and not having to break down the larger coins. I also have your Glock here is pretty much a staple in that regard. Not only because it is our number 2, remember, but also when you need money, a gun like this, you just flip it like nothing. 200, 300 bucks on a used Glock, it's going to be going very fast. And especially when things are getting complicated, when things are getting tough, a gun sells very fast. Ammunition is somewhat on the same level. Not only do you need it to actually run your gun, but if you start building up, I know this is a video about being on a budget, but if you start building up your supply of ammunition little by little, it's not going to be going to waste. You're going to be either using it, or if things get really tough, you could even sell some of it. You start small, you start with a couple of boxes, and as time and finances allow, you start building on that as well. Number 4 is, of course, food. If you don't have food, you're pretty much done. You're not going to be living much without food. You need it pretty much every single day. Sure, you can do a day or two without eating food, but you get my point. It's not because of a disaster. Disasters or not, you're going to be eating to stay alive. one of the best foods you can stockpile is actually rice. It is, specifically to this video, it's very budget friendly because rice it's quite affordable, and it's also healthy for you as well. Yeah, I'm sure you're thinking right now, my ketogenic diet, whatever, paleo, whatever it is. No, you're actually wrong. Spanish people in Spain have the highest life expectancy in the world. I think that it's only the Japanese, and kind of right there between Japanese people and Spain is about number 2 or 3 life expectancy worldwide. And what people in Spain are known for is the Mediterranean diet. And what actually people in Spain end up eating a lot of is what you actually see right here. It's rice. Yes, you put some seafood in it, but basically the bulk of it is rice. If you're eating rice, combining it with a little bit of meat and vegetables here and there, and adding a lot of fresh fruit to it, you're going to be having a fantastic diet. So this isn't just about survival and stocking up food for a disaster, for an emergency. This is actually about eating healthy every single day. I'm a pretty healthy guy. My blood test cannot be any better. This is what I eat. This is what keeps me going well enough. Combining this with lentils, fantastic. With these two, you combine them in so many possibilities. You can do absolutely anything with these two, with different amounts of rice and lentils. And for example, I had pork chops the other day. I try not to eat a ton of meat, especially because I don't think it's all that great for you. But if I have a little bit maybe of leftovers of something that we did in the oven, or maybe a couple of steaks that we had left over, you chop it up a little bit, you mix it with your rice with some tomato sauce or whatnot, you end up with a pretty decent dish. And again, the point is, it's not only stocking up well, lasting for several months or more, depending on how you store it. It is actually healthy and good for you. And you store what you eat what you store. Remember, this is something, at least for us, this is part of our daily diet. And it is famously the kind of diet most people have around here. People say, yeah, we're going to be having rice. Well, they have rice with a ton of other stuff and different flavoring additives, but the bulk of it is rice. Both of these are local, the lentils and the rice, and it is a great idea. So just don't buy the cheapest rice you can find. Try looking. Basmati rice is also very good, tastes very nice, and has a a good scent and flavor to it. And of course, this is just kind of just to make a point. You start building up a supply of canned vegetables as well, or meats, and maybe you have a garden or you have a homestead and you grow your own food as well. But you also need that bulk of stored food for when things go wrong. You actually have something to eat. You're not depending on catching, growing, hunting, or fishing to eat. You have food already stocked up. So yeah, that's kind of the point. Also remember water. If we're talking food, you're talking water as well. Without water, you are just done. So a supply of water, bottled water, is as cheap as it gets, and use jugs. Even you can get those for free. But have actual water stored, and get yourself a decent water filter. One of our guys, our friends, the Berkey guy, I'll leave the link there below for you to get your Berkey filter. I have it in my kitchen. It is one of those additions you should have. Yes, you're talking about spending a little bit of money there, but it's absolutely worth it, and it's essential to have safe drinking water for survival. So number 5 would be what I call grid down supplies, meaning supplies that you would be using when you don't have power, electricity, gas, and you need to do without. Specifically looking at means of cooking the food that you had, which we were talking about before. I mean, you have the food and you don't have means of cooking it. Sure, you can improvise a number of things, but if you think about it specifically and have tools already in place so as to sort that out, that's even better. Means of heating as well. It's essential if you're going to be preparing, especially in cold weather locations where a power outage in the middle of winter may be the end of you. In those cases specifically, you need means to stay warm. Now, if we're looking at doing this in somewhat of a reasonable budget, you do have alternatives. One of my favorite things to have is a kerosene heater. The one that I have here, that's a Moonlighter. It's very nice. It's made in Japan. It's made by Kerosene, and it has a very bright light, so it works as a source of heat, so as to heat a room. It works like a lantern as well. It's very bright, and you can actually cook on top of it as well. You have that surface there, so you can cook with it too. It's not ideal for cooking, but you can do that. Even better if you have a dedicated cooker like that one, you know, a cooking stove thing. These are very cheap. I mean, this is very budget oriented for like 10-15 bucks or cheaper in a garage sale, or if you buy it used somewhere. That's definitely one of the things that it comes in very handy, and it's very practical because you can even put it on top of your electric or gas burner and use that instead in the same place. I've done that myself, very successfully using it in that way. A few bottles of gas and you're good to go. You have means of cooking the food for a few days if something goes wrong. Even cheaper would be making your Cat 2000 or Cat 32 stove, or fancy Cat food stove, which is basically just a can with a few holes. You put some alcohol in there, you light it up, and eventually it starts burning on the sides. You put up a pot on top, and you can actually cook food with this. As cheap as it gets. And of course, flashlights, which you obviously need for when there's no power. Some of these are, you know, a rechargeable. A nice rechargeable flashlight makes a lot of sense. Sure, it's going to be a little bit more money, but it's a good addition. Now, thinking of a pre-restricted budget, these are like $1 a piece, and you can buy them cheaper if you buy them in bulk. And these are quite bright. There's nothing wrong with these for a little flashlight. You can keep several of these around. One of the nice things, if you have a Primark nearby, these stores, these string lights, the string LEDs, these cost $2. They're quite good. They use 2 AA batteries, and it's almost like a little lantern in its own, and the way in which it brights up a room. These are a good budget alternative for you know, alternative source of light when there's a power outage. There's other things as well that you could add on and such, but these would be the basic ones. Of course, you could go with a nice big generator, properly installed in your home and such, and just light up the entire place as if nothing is happening. That's always an alternative. This is stuff that I'm talking about that you could buy used for just a few bucks, and even buying new. I have one of those. Well, not just like one. I have a new Kerosene. The Corona, I think it's 23. New in its box, specifically in case something happens, I have a spare. Bonus point number 6 is put together a decent EDC kit. The kind of tools you will carry with you on a daily basis, and in all honesty are the ones that are most likely to be with you when you need them. All sorts of emergencies, even disasters. If you don't have a minimum amount of tools with you, then you will have nothing. You can do this quite affordably too. These days you will find a ton of cheap quality flashlights, or even used ones like this, for just a few bucks. When it comes to a knife, again, you have a ton of options available there for 15-20 bucks, give or take. Look around, see what's good, what people are liking, and has good reviews. Even in multi-tools, which used to be the expensive thing, you can have a Leatherman sidekick like this one going for like 25 bucks or so, not much more than that. And it's a budget tool, which is a high value tool. You get a ton of multi-tool for your money. You're really not going to be missing anything all that bad. It's pretty much going to be doing anything your wave will do, especially during an emergency. And just a big lighter or a clipper like this one, which is a little bit nicer, at least in my opinion. These are the things that you should be getting, and when you're used to having this stuff with you, you see how handy it is, and if unfortunately you happen to need it during something more of an emergency, you will be glad to do so. You know, getting even a EDC bag should be quite affordable. A surplus bag, this one costs like 10 bucks, and it's a decent satchel for carrying stuff on a daily basis. Doesn't look all that out of place. It's kind of like fashionable these days. These camo patterns and satchels and such, and messenger bags are quite popular. But if not, your old high school bag, this is my old high school bag, it's still pretty much functional and you can carry stuff in it perfectly well. Then you start working on maybe your car kit, a bag that you keep in your vehicle in case of an emergency, if you have to walk back home. Again, you probably have a ton of bags floating around. Any okay bag will do, and you put together the gear that you have in your house and you start filling up the holes as money allows. Guys, that's been all for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell, because if not, you're not going to be getting future videos as I put them up on YouTube. That's going to be all for now. Take care. See you on our next video.